The venue coordinator's voice was shaking when she called me at 7 in the morning, 3 hours before my wedding. "Miss Reyes, I'm so sorry, but there's been a cancellation. Your mother called last night and canceled the entire booking. She said the wedding was off." I stood there in my hotel room, still in my pajamas, holding the phone like it might explode. Behind me, my bridesmaids were getting ready, laughing about something they hadn't heard yet. My fiancé Nathan was in another room down the hall, probably drinking coffee and texting his groomsmen. He didn't know either. "What do you mean she canceled it?" My voice came out steady somehow, even though my hands were trembling. "I'm the one who booked the venue. I'm the one who paid the deposit. She can't just cancel my wedding. I'm sorry, but she presented documentation showing she was the primary contact. She said there was a family emergency, and the wedding needed to be postponed indefinitely." She seemed very convincing. Documentation. My mother had forged documents to cancel my wedding venue 3 hours before the ceremony. I hung up and called Nathan. "We have a problem." 10 minutes later, we were both on the phone with the venue, with my wedding planner, with everyone we could think of. The answer was always the same. The venue was now booked for another event. My mother had called the backup vendors too. The florist, the photographer, the caterer, all canceled, all too late to fix. "Why would she do this?" Nathan kept asking, but I knew why. She'd been against this wedding from the start. Not because of Nathan. He was perfect. A pediatric surgeon, kind, supportive, everything I'd ever wanted. No, my mother was against it because I'd refused to let her control it. She wanted the wedding at her country club. I wanted something smaller, more intimate. She wanted to invite 300 of her closest friends. I wanted 75 people who actually mattered to us. She wanted a 10-tier cake and an ice sculpture. I wanted simple and meaningful. But the real issue was money. She'd offered to pay for the wedding, with conditions. I had to do it her way. When I said no thank you, that Nathan and I would pay for it ourselves, she'd acted like I'd slapped her. "After everything I've done for you," she'd said. "After all the sacrifices I made raising you." I'd stood my ground. This was my wedding. My day. My choice. And now she'd destroyed it. My phone started buzzing. Text messages. From my mother. "I heard about the venue. Such a shame. I told you that place wasn't reliable. If you'd listened to me and used the country club, this wouldn't have happened. Call me when you're ready to do this properly." I showed Nathan. He went pale. "She's not even pretending she didn't do it. She thinks I'll cave," I said. "She thinks I'll come crawling back and beg her to fix this with her money and her connections." "Will you?" I looked at my wedding dress hanging on the door. I'd spent months finding that dress. My bridesmaids had their dresses. Nathan had his suit. Our families were already in Denver, already checked into their hotels. My Aunt Simone had flown in from Seattle yesterday. Nathan's grandparents had driven 12 hours from Albuquerque. "No," I said. "I'm getting married today. I don't know how yet, but I'm getting married today." Nathan pulled me close. "Then we'll figure it out, together." I called Aunt Simone. She was my mother's younger sister, but they couldn't be more different. Where my mother was controlling and cold, Aunt Simone was warm and generous. Where my mother demanded perfection, Aunt Simone celebrated authenticity. I should have known to call her first. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" she answered immediately. I told her everything. The canceled venue, the canceled vendors, my mother's texts. By the time I finished, I was crying, and I hated myself for it. I didn't want to cry on my wedding day. "That manipulative, vindictive woman," Aunt Simone said, and I could hear her moving around, like she was already packing. "I'm coming to your hotel right now. Don't move. Don't do anything. I'm handling this." "Aunt Simone, there's nothing to handle. Everything's canceled. We can't just conjure up a wedding venue in 3 hours. Watch me." She hung up before I could argue. 40 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Aunt Simone standing there with 2 large iced coffees and a determined expression. "Drink this." She handed me a coffee. "Then get your dress on. You're getting married in 2 hours. "How?" "My house." I blinked. "Your house?" "I have a 6,000 square foot home in Cherry Creek with a 2-acre backyard. The weather is perfect. 75 people will fit comfortably on my back lawn. I've already called my event planner friend. She's bringing chairs, an arch, flowers, everything. My chef friend is catering. Another friend is bringing her photography equipment. This is happening. Aunt Simone, that's too much. You can't just… Your mother tried to ruin your wedding because you wouldn't let her control you. I won't let her win. You're getting married today, in a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by people who actually love you. Now get that dress on. The next 2 hours were a blur. Aunt Simone had an army of friends who descended on her house like fairy godmothers. By the time Nathan and I arrived, her backyard had been transformed. White chairs arranged in rows, an archway covered in roses, string lights ready to illuminate everything as the sun set. A small table for the cake we'd somehow still managed to get, since it had been ordered through a friend, not a vendor my mother could cancel. My mother wasn't there. I'd sent her a message. Wedding is happening today at 4 p.m. Aunt Simone's house. You're not invited. She'd called me 17 times. I didn't answer. Instead, I stood in Aunt Simone's bedroom, looking at myself in the mirror. My dress fit perfectly. My hair looked beautiful. My bridesmaids surrounded me, all of them crying happy tears. You look stunning, my best friend Maya said. I can't believe Aunt Simone pulled this off, another bridesmaid added. Neither could I. As I walked down the makeshift aisle on my father's arm, I saw 75 smiling faces. People who loved us, people who showed up. The ceremony was perfect, simple, meaningful. Everything I'd wanted. Nathan cried when he saw me. I cried when he said his vows. Aunt Simone cried from her seat in the front row. My mother showed up anyway. She arrived during the reception, marching across the lawn in a designer suit, my brother trailing behind her looking uncomfortable. I can't believe you did this without me, she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. Your own mother. How could you be so selfish? Aunt Simone was there in seconds. You need to leave, Jennifer. This is your house, Simone, not hers. I have every right to be here. You canceled her wedding venue. You sabotaged her day. You have no rights here. I did what was necessary, my mother said. She was making a mistake. That venue was tacky. This whole thing is tacky. If she'd just listened to me. Get out. Aunt Simone's voice was steel. Get out of my house right now, or I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing. My mother looked at me, waiting for me to intervene, to apologize, to beg her to stay. I took Nathan's hand. You heard her. Leave. You'll regret this, my mother said. When you come crying to me because you need money, because you need help, because you realize you can't make it on your own, I won't be there. Good, I said. She left. My brother followed her, not even looking at me. The reception continued. We danced, we laughed, we celebrated, and it was perfect. Better than anything my mother could have planned, because it was real. But that wasn't the end of the story. That was just the beginning. 3 days later, Nathan and I were in Hawaii on our honeymoon when my phone started blowing up. My mother, my brother, aunts and uncles I barely knew, all calling, all leaving frantic messages. I finally listened to one voicemail from my brother. You need to call Mom back. It's important. It's about Grandma's will. My grandmother had passed away 2 months before the wedding. She'd left everything to my mother, or so I'd been told. I hadn't questioned it. I'd been too busy planning a wedding. I called Aunt Simone instead. What's going on with Grandma's will? There was a long pause. Your mother didn't tell you. Tell me what? Your grandmother left you her house. And a trust fund. A substantial one. Your mother's been managing it since Grandma passed. Supposedly until she could transfer it to you after the wedding. But sweetheart, I just found out she's been draining it. The hotel room suddenly felt too small. What? She's been taking money out. Large amounts. She told the executor she was using it for wedding expenses. For you. But we both know that's a lie. My mother had been stealing my inheritance. Using it to control me. Probably planning to give it to my brother. Her golden child. How much? About 200,000 so far. I sat down on the bed. Nathan took my hand. There's more, Aunt Simone said quietly. The house. Your grandmother's house in Boulder. Your mother listed it for sale last week. She told the realtor she inherited it and wanted a quick sale. My grandmother's house. The one where I'd spent every summer as a child. The one filled with memories. The one Grandma had specifically left to me in her will, according to Aunt Simone. I've already contacted a lawyer, Aunt Simone continued. We're filing an emergency injunction to stop the sale and freeze the trust fund. But you need to come home. You need to be part of this. We cut our honeymoon short. I didn't want to. I wanted to stay in Hawaii and pretend none of this was happening. But I couldn't let my mother steal my grandmother's legacy. The next 2 months were a nightmare. Lawyers, court dates, family members taking sides. My mother played the victim perfectly. Poor Jennifer. Just trying to manage her daughter's inheritance, and now being accused of theft by her ungrateful child. But the evidence was damning. Bank statements showing transfers from the trust to my mother's personal accounts. Emails between her and the realtor about selling Grandma's house. Text messages to my brother about how she'd make sure he got what he deserved from Grandma's estate. The worst part was the wedding venue revelation. During discovery, we found out my mother had taken $50,000 from my trust fund the month before my wedding. She'd told the executor it was for my wedding expenses, but I'd never seen that money. Nathan and I had paid for everything ourselves. My lawyer dug deeper. The wedding venue I'd originally booked? My mother had paid them $20,000 to cancel my reservation and claim there was a family emergency. She'd wanted me desperate, wanted me to come to her, wanted me to accept her money and her control. When I confronted her in her lawyer's office, she didn't deny it. You needed to learn, she said coldly. You needed to understand that you can't just reject me and expect to survive on your own. I gave you everything. I raised you. And this is how you repay me? By choosing some man over your own mother? You stole from me, I said. You sabotaged my wedding. You tried to sell my grandmother's house. I was protecting you, she insisted. That house is too much for you to manage. The money? You would have wasted it. I know what's best for you. I've always known. You're delusional. She stood up, knocking her chair back. I'm your mother. I deserve respect. I deserve gratitude. Instead, you've turned into a selfish, ungrateful brat who thinks she knows everything. I'm done, I said. I'm done with you. With your manipulation. With your control. You're never going to be part of my life again. You'll come back, she said confidently. You always do. You need me. No, I said. I really don't. The judge ruled in my favor. Every penny my mother had taken from the trust had to be repaid with interest. The sale of Grandma's house was canceled. My mother was removed as executor and trustee. Aunt Simone took over instead. But the judge went further. He referred my mother's case to the district attorney for potential fraud charges. Taking money from a trust you're managing for someone else and using it for personal expenses? That's embezzlement. My mother hired an expensive lawyer and avoided jail time, but she had to repay everything, plus substantial fines and legal fees. My brother tried to help her, draining his own savings to pay her lawyers. They lost. The family fractured completely. Half sided with my mother, believing her story that I was an ungrateful daughter who'd turned on her. The other half sided with me, especially after Aunt Simone showed them the evidence. I didn't care. I had Nathan. I had Aunt Simone. I had friends who showed up for me. That was enough. Grandma's house became my home. Nathan and I moved in and spent months restoring it, making it ours while honoring her memory. The trust fund paid for Nathan's student loans and the down payment on his private practice. My mother tried to reach out exactly once. 6 months after the court ruling, she sent a letter. I've been in therapy, she wrote. My therapist says I have control issues stemming from my own childhood trauma. I'm working on it. I hope someday you can forgive me. I threw the letter away. Maybe she was in therapy. Maybe she was trying to change. But I didn't owe her forgiveness. I didn't owe her anything. A year later, I found out she'd moved to Arizona. My brother went with her. They didn't tell me they were leaving. I found out through a cousin. Good riddance. 2 years after my wedding, Nathan and I had our first child, a daughter. We named her Simone, after my aunt, the real hero of my story. Aunt Simone cried when we told her, I don't deserve this honor. Yes, you do, I said. You saved my wedding. You helped me save my inheritance. You showed me what real family looks like. She held baby Simone and smiled. Your grandmother would be so proud of you. You stood up for yourself. You didn't let your mother break you. She was right. I didn't let my mother break me. I broke free instead. Sometimes I wonder if my mother thinks about what she lost. Does she regret sabotaging my wedding? Does she regret stealing from me? Does she regret losing her daughter and granddaughter? I'll never know. And I've stopped caring. I have my life. My husband. My daughter. My home. My chosen family. And every year on my anniversary, Aunt Simone hosts a party in the same backyard where I got married. We celebrate not just my marriage, but my freedom, my independence, my choice to walk away from toxicity and build something beautiful instead. My mother tried to ruin my wedding. She tried to control my life. She tried to steal my inheritance, but she failed. And I won. That's the real happy ending.